Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, and today I'm making a video about books. Now, let me just say right from the start, this video is a stream of consciousness, if you like. I've not really prepared a special thesis about books and my love of books, but I just wanted to express the fact that I am a great book lover. The feel, the texture, the knowledge contained within them, everything about books. And people have often commented when I've been making my videos that they've noticed and been intrigued, I think, with the shelves which are covered in books. And so I thought this would be something to talk about in a video. And then somebody said, well, you know, you mention books in your videos, perhaps you could give us some recommendations. And I've thought about this for a while. It's very curious recommending books, because what one likes in a book may not be what other people would like in a book. And I've seen other people's recommendations, and sometimes they just fall a bit flat, and sometimes you go, oh yes, that's exactly the book I want, and you buy it and you think, oh, it's not quite what I thought. So I'm hedging my bets on this book recommendation. I can make what I ought to do, and I realize this now, is that when I'm talking about certain books, I should actually just put an Amazon link to the books in the videos that I'm referring to them, so that people can check them out, rather than give a weekly or a monthly or a wheneverly recommendation to books. But yes, I do like books. I love books. I don't have a television. I try not to watch too much social media and videos. I try not to watch too much nonsense, but we all need a certain amount of just junk TV or junk videos, or, you know, stuff that doesn't really do any harm. But I think there's a point where you can just get too much of it, and I like to lose myself in books. Most of my books that you see around here are actually factual books, non-fiction books, although there are a few fiction ones. For a while, for about three years-ish, I was writing some children's books, or at least trying to, you know, before I was doing the daily videos, I'd taken a break from my my video production stuff, where I was doing the long format videos of about 45 minutes, which took roughly 3 months to put together, with all the graphics and the whole process of writing a script, researching to write the script, going on a location hunt, and the whole thing. And people have praised those videos, and thank you very much indeed. That's very kind of you. And I sort of got a bit disillusioned, as you do in life. You know, you do something and you feel like you're not achieving anything, and you think, oh, one of the things I was very interested in is storytelling. I've always been interested in storytelling, and that's where the videos really, in a way, is a means to telling a story. And I started to write children's stories because I never thought I was going to be good enough to write adult fiction. And books, of course, help you with that. And I was reading, I've always been a reader, but I was reading books to try and gain information, so that the stuff that you write has some sort of factual basis to it. And I know how difficult it is to write and encapsulate ideas. And I think that's my first point, really, about books. A lot of people will try and find their facts and information on the internet, which is very convenient. You know, we no longer have to go down to the library, which is a shame, because libraries are disappearing, because it's so convenient just to go online, have a look at a Wikipedia page. And very often stuff on the internet, I find, and you can contradict me of course, is it's very concentrated. So you get a lot of concentrated information because you're trying to get over the most salient points as quickly as possible, because people are generally impatient and want the facts and want to go away with whatever it is they wanted to look up very quickly without going and spending a lot of time and getting a more broader picture. And I think that's where a book, you know, gives you that broader picture instead of just giving you those short, punchy, pithy comments about whatever it is you're looking up. A book, especially if it's written by a good author, will take you on a journey, will take you around the subject you're looking up so that you can fully appreciate it. It may be illustrated with photographs and drawings or plans and sketches, but it will, through the 100 to 300 pages, whatever, will take you around that subject in a way that is almost hand-holding and explain things as you go. Whereas for me, when I look stuff up online, it is because it's condensed, there's a lot of assumptions made that you already know stuff, whereas a book can say, well, okay, you may know this and you can skip these pages, but here is what this bit means and here is where this bit goes, or there's the glossary and so forth. So that's one of the things that I like about books. I have this passion for books of all ages, and particularly older books from different ages, because you can read it and you may think that, well, that's all true, but you know that there are things that are no longer true. For example, I've got some wonderful books that have been written in the 1930s, and they talk about Sussex, because, you know, one of the interests in my videos is going around Sussex, and one of the things they talk about is that in, say, hidden Sussex or unusual things in Sussex or bits of history of Sussex is Piltdown Man, and they talk about this character that was found I think in the Victorian times, and they talk about Piltdown Man and the bones that were found and how he must have evolved in here, this ancient man. Well, of course, we know that subsequently this was an absolute hoax and wasn't a true thing at all. But for a while, it duped the scientists and the archaeologists, and they thought that there was such a character as Piltdown Man many centuries, you know, in our ancestry, but we know it's not true. And so you can look at an old book and you can read that and go, oh, okay, so you are aware that not everything, if you're reading in the 30s, for example, is up to date, but there's just something about the way they used to write in those days, well, for me, that appeals, that you don't get so much in today's book. So it's nice to have that mixture, particularly if you're reading history, to read more up-to-date books, but also books from a generation or so ago, because actually you're gleaning different parts. You're also gleaning how different people thought about a subject, which I think is interesting. I mean, just to give you a range of the sort of books, these aren't recommendations by any means. So one of the things, guides, of course, are always very handy. This is Trees and Shrubs. This is the Reader's Digest, but it's beautifully illustrated. And when out and about looking at plants, and it's something I desperately want to learn more about, is wild plants and trees and shrubs, so that I can recognize them and talk a little bit with authority, because I am such a dunce. I went through 1970s comprehensive school education. That was it. I only got CSEs. I don't have GCSEs. I'm not really a clever person at all. And there's that essence in me that says, you know, I haven't got the knowledge. I don't know enough. And of course, you know what it's like. The more you read and the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything. And I've got to that point in my life where I'm really feeling that I don't know anything, and I'm trying to desperately fill in the gaps in my knowledge, which of course is a lifetime achievement. And the sad thing is that you fill up when you get to a point perhaps where you've got as much knowledge as you can take and you still want more, and you come to the end of your life and it all disappears. Where does it go? I have thanks to a very nice gentleman who gave me the complete works of Winston Churchill's memoirs, and they're in these beautiful little books, and he talks about his wartime years as well as other things. Winston Churchill's in the news currently because he's been defamed, and there are people, ignorant people I have to say, who are trying to claim that he was racist and that he was not the great man that he was. And I think you only have to delve into the true history of him to realise what an incredible individual he was, and the liberties that we enjoy now we would not have if it wasn't for Mr. Churchill. And again, there's a lot of reading to be done. I just don't get as much time as I would like to read. This is one of the problems, you know, modern life keeps us busy trying to earn a living. I've mentioned this book a number of times, so I thought I'd better just show it. And it's a recent addition to me, and this is why I've been walking over the South Downs, particularly north of Brighton. And this is a Freedom to Roam guide to the Brighton Downs, from Shoreham to Newhaven and Beeding to Lewes. And it is such a huge compendium of facts, from the geology of the Downs, the natural history of the Downs, the buildings that you'll find on the Downs, the urban fringe, the environmental aspect of it. And for me, the important message it reminds us is what we've lost, what there once was. And this is a recurring thing that I'm finding in doing these daily walks, is the more that you walk and the more that you look, and I'm sure that we don't look hard enough, that there is this now monoculture on the Downs, particularly of crops for intensive farming. And when you realise that 80 years ago, before the Second World War, that the picturesque England, the countryside was teeming, even then, teeming with insects, with wildlife, mammals, and all sorts of different wild plants that was feeding all of that. And we seem to, in our civilized and modern world, seem to have blindly destroyed a lot of it. And my worry is, of course, that the next generation coming up see what we have and think that's what we've always had. And of course, that's not true at all. And it's only again by reading books that you start to think, we had that, we did this, you know, weasels and stoats were common. And they're there, but they're not common as they once were. And habitats for wild animals seem to be disappearing. And this is where reading things and talking of the land, this is a 1930s book here, and it's called The Land Now and Then by R.G. Stapleton. And I bought this, I can't quite remember why I bought it, but it's quite heavy going. It's a report, basically. It's a report on the land in the 1930s. I've been doing a lot of reading around that period, around before the Second World War. And when I'm looking at the villages and the landscape and going on my walks and referencing what people thought perhaps 100 years ago, 80 years ago, whatever, and looking at how things have changed, it's interesting that 100 years ago people were worried, very deeply worried, that the land was being used up by modern housing, and that the modern houses were very often unsympathetic to the landscape, and that they were being placed in odd places of natural beauty. And while we now are aware of that and we're trying to curb it, these incursions still go on. And this report, fascinating report, this man pretty much single-handedly calculated every road, the area of every road, every rail track, every car park, every airport, anything that had urban mass on it. Anything that had urban mass on it at all, calculated how much land had been built on, and how much of that land had been built on productive farmland. So, because back in the 30s, now, although we have had, as I said before, with this monoculture and new industrial farming techniques. Before that, this is in the days of horses and ploughs, he was worried, and quite rightly so, that we were building on land that should have been used for farmland, because farming and feeding ourselves is the most important thing that we can do for ourselves. And he was worried that we were building on precious land that was going to feed for ourselves. And it's a fascinating report. I mean, it is quite heavy and he goes into quite a lot of detail, but yeah, he was worried that in 100 or so years time from then, and we're nearly there now, that it would be such a big change that we would no longer be self-sufficient. Of course, he didn't know that the modern practices were coming in. Anyway, I'm somewhat waffling. Books, that's really what this video is just about, is to say that books contain thoughts, people's thoughts, encapsulated and beautifully put down into words that unfold as you read them. And that's why I've got them. I just wish I could retain it up here so that I could spout it in my videos, but I'm doing my best. Anyway, thank you for watching. People have asked me about the books and I thought, well, I'll address it. So there you go, books. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. Otherwise, I will catch you out and about on another walk when the weather is improving. It's raining today, which is why I'm inside. Till next time, bye-bye.